In this session today, I'm joined by Bryan Charter, who is the one of the creators, founders, and executives, I think we could call him, of a brand new, and it really is brand new, literally launched days ago, app called SuSy. And we're going to hear a lot more about this because this is all about one of the big challenges I guess most of us have is trying to find ways of building sustainability into our lives, both professionally and personally. And Bryan and his colleagues have, I believe, started a great journey that's going to enable us to all begin this journey together. And this is all about making sustainable homes achievable for all. Welcome to the show, Bryan.
Thanks very much, Neil. Great to be here.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about your background. I mean, what kind of brought you to, I guess, this kind of world of sustainability and kind of got you really kind of thinking down the lines of where you are now with SuSy?
Yeah, so I started my career, spent the first 10 years of my career working within the sort of property maintenance sphere, managing businesses that looked after a lot of social housing. And as part of that, and I've always sort of been involved in buildings to some greater or lesser degree. And then in the last sort of 10 years, I then moved and started my own strategic consultancy, and I was working with a number of businesses and entrepreneurs, supporting them to grow and understanding, all those bits that really create a market and make things tick and enable them to understand their customer type and all of that. Then I got introduced to a Brazilian entrepreneur called Mauro, who he built a couple of businesses that managed and ran data centers, and he's been into smart buildings for a long time. And he had this vision and this passion for, he's Bristol based, and he said he was cycling over Bristol one day and looking at all their houses and went, how can we make all of these houses sort of self-sustaining? We've got a big CO2 problem. How can we make all those houses self-sustaining? I was introduced to him, and we started just working on that idea. And I've got to be honest, I mean, my interest in sustainability came from quite a basic place, which was I've got 3 young kids, and I have grown increasingly concerned about what does their future look like. And so applying that and applying my sort of strategic knowledge and my historic work knowledge to buildings and homes, well, and realizing that 20% of our CO2 emissions come from individuals' homes, the houses that we have in the UK. This is actually, that's a fifth of our CO2 emissions. It's a massive part of the problem. And it's not one that really gets that much focus. We've always heard about transport and, all the sort of obvious high ticket items of going away from fossil fuels at that macro level, but not actually looking at that individual sort of property consumption and what can we do about that to improve that and make that more efficient. So that's kind of where the idea started.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because, yeah, I guess I've seen so many and actually experienced myself so many moments in time where I didn't really kind of plan it. I didn't really choreograph it. It just seemed to be serendipity that I met the right people to do the right things in the right moment. It feels like, you meeting Maro at that moment was a game changer. Well, clearly it was a game changer for you, and it kind of brought out all of the, maybe things that were kind of brewing under the surface, but hadn't actually manifested into being something you were doing in terms of action. It's always quite interesting, isn't it? When you kind of really are very conscious and aware of these things, you suddenly realize, hold on a minute, everything is aligning. The time is right. I'm in the right place. I'm meeting the right people. It must have kind of felt like that, I guess, that you just thought, now is that moment. I have to do something about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always been quite a big picture thinker, and so, happy to do my little bit in terms of reducing our waste and all of that sort of thing, doing our recycling and trying not to use too much energy around the home. But it sort of didn't feel big enough, if you know what I mean. And you feel like there is a huge movement that and we need to do more if we're going to achieve net zero. And as you say, everything seemed to just align, the opportunity came, and I thought, I can see something that I can really apply my knowledge and skills to help us really get in and tackle this problem. And so, made complete sense to run with it.
So I guess there were times when, this is a big topic. I mean, there are so many different angles and perspectives that you could have taken. Why was the route of the app? Because this is very app driven, and we'll talk to everybody about kind of what it is and how you access it and kind of what it's going to do and what to expect in a minute. But kind of why did you decide to kind of go down that route?
So we've really designed the business with the Amazon principle in mind of, you innovate by making things faster, cheaper, easier, essentially. That's how you disrupt industries, and that's how you create innovation. But also, what Amazon have done so brilliantly is they've made things frictionless for people. And at the end of the day, people's lives are complicated, and they've got so much going on, so much they're trying to manage, etc. And so if we're trying to get people to move in terms of doing something that's actually quite difficult, and making upgrades to their homes, making them more sustainable, the first thing that we thought was, well, what's going to be the sort of use case? And we thought, we want someone to be able to go from the position of sitting at the home, receiving a massive energy bill, sitting on the sofa, to go, what can I do about this? And what's everyone got in their pocket? Well, they've all got a phone in there. So they'll jump on their phone, do a Google, how can I save energy in the home? And hopefully that will then ultimately take them straight to our app. And we can then take them down a journey, enable them to find out a load of things about their home, about their property, and essentially make suggestions and start enabling them through, well, as you said, we're going to talk about exactly what it does a little bit later, but start enabling them to make change in as easy and frictionless way as possible, so that we're eliminating as many of the barriers as we can. And that's the pure reason that we went with the app.
I love this word, frictionless, and I think to me it just is the right way to go. Whatever kind of industry or whatever kind of service is being developed, it feels like that frictionless approach is so critical, because the more people I talk to, both in a sense of being in their personal lives and also as professionals, that decision making when it is frictionless, where there's no kind of barriers, all the barriers have been taken away and you can just get on with it and you can understand it. And again, the other word you used there was enable. And I think this is so important. There is so much kind of noise and chaos, and it's like, oh, this is almost too difficult a subject to get into. I know I should, I know I must. And I think a lot of people, both personally and in business, are, feeling almost obliged to jump onto this sustainability bandwagon, but don't really know where to start. And I think for a lot of people, there's almost a bit of an embarrassment that I don't really know the jargon. I don't understand all the acronyms. I don't really know where to begin. And so I'll do it tomorrow, and it's that sort of mañana, I'll put it off, and it might go away, or somebody might sort of sort it for me. And I think this idea of trying to enable people to come on a journey with you, I think certainly having downloaded the app and played with it, and got a sense of really where you're coming from with this, it just feels it's very inclusive. It does feel frictionless. It doesn't feel intimidating, because I think a lot of this can be intimidating, particularly if in business you're doing this in front of somebody else, or you're in a meeting and you're kind of expected to know what you're talking about. This is not what that's like. This is a very hand-holding experience. And was that something, again, that as part of this frictionless idea you were looking to do, is almost sort of education piece, there's an enabling piece, there's a guidance piece? Is that kind of the mantra, really?
It's funny you touch on something that we did a lot of sort of brand identity work at the beginning, and what are we all about as SuSy? Who are we? What is the SuSy brand? And we came up with the concept of the sort of trusted uncle or auntie who comes and puts a hand around the shoulder and says, "Hey, yeah, look, we're just trying to help." And that's what we're all about. And the other thing that we said right from the beginning is, we said we are pragmatists, not activists. And what that means is, while we have an aligned cause with all of people who are working towards, zero carbon and sustainability, we also recognize that this has got to fit within individuals' lives. And so that's kind of been the principle on which we've built it. And so we always look at it through that perspective, and not, we don't want it to be complex. We've looked at a bunch of apps that are out there across a whole spectrum, fitness trackers and all sorts of things, and gone, which ones are really easy and which ones are, as soon as it makes you go, oh, don't really understand it, that's a problem. And no doubt we haven't got that 100% right still, but we are getting that feedback constantly to then tweak that and simplify that. And we want the journey into it to be as simple as possible, so that people can use it, and it's completely free of charge. They can use it to get a real sense of, right, this is the state of my current home. This is my current energy usage. This is how much CO2 that produces. We're able to show them all of that information. This is what it costs them. And then, and that's the other angle to it, is actually, we very much wanted to go from a economic perspective in terms of what are the benefits, what are the impacts to people in terms of savings that they're going to make if they undertake certain upgrades to their home. How much less are they going to be spending on energy? And it's one of the reasons why we're also working on building in financing solutions for people. So the idea being that ultimately they won't be spending 10 grand on, an upgrade solar array, improving insulation, whatever it may be, but they can go, well, actually, immediately I'm going to save 150 quid a month, but I'm only paying out, 200 or 250. So it's making the economics of it all work much better. And ultimately, they, if they take a loan like that, they'll pay it off over time, and then they'll just be making the saving. And then on top of that, it's then, and by the way, this is how much CO2 you're going to be saving as a result of all of that. So it's, we very much approached it from a practical, normal, average person centric perspective, that exactly what you've said. It's, well, maybe I should do something about this, but the incentive maybe isn't quite there in amongst everything else, if it's purely the CO2 basis. It's purely about the environmental savings. So we very much wanted to focus on that economic perspective too.
Yeah, this is really fascinating, and I think, for me, it sums up. I think the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you was because I did get a sense when I sort of first met Leanne, and she was talking about a lot of the background and kind of where you guys are headed with all of this, and I just felt a sense of difference. There was a real kind of difference with the brand and the positioning, which was different to the activism. And I don't have any problem at all with activists, in this area. We all need to be aware of what the possibilities are. But it felt so refreshing to get a more practical approach, because a lot of people can make a lot of noise about all this stuff. But it's only when, as a human being, you kind of get a sense of, okay, but what can I now do about it? I get it. I hear the messages. The media is shouting this. The activists are, blocking the streets and all that kind of stuff. But what can I do? And I'm not going to be going out and joining those demonstrations, but what can I do? And so that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this conversation, because I think certainly there are a lot of people that I encounter are in that kind of that mindset where it's like, all right, I understand it. Now show me and guide me to those next steps. And I think because the angle that you're taking is this kind of bringing it very close to home, literally close to home, because it's all about your home and what you can do. It's almost that you're creating this kind of mindset that people can, once they've sorted their home, then they can explore all of the other facets of their life where they might be, contributing not a particularly positive way, but starting from the core, the place that you go back to every evening after work, or the place that you're working from during the day. It's right at the center of everything, isn't it? So this is a really powerful kind of, starting point at the core of everybody's world, really.
Yeah. Well, and that was the other thing, was that we came across, there are a number of apps out there that are sort of carbon trackers, and And we looked at them and went, the problem is it's the fatigue of, manual entry into all of these things across. How many miles have you done on the bus or in the car or and then how much food have you thrown away? And then, where are you flying this year and how long have you left and you can put in your kilowatt hours, in your house as well as part of all of this. And it's just the thing that we felt with that was it's overwhelming. And it's much better to hone in on, and again, you take the Amazon principle, they started selling books, out of which you can then move into a whole realm of other things potentially. But, start on the home. Everybody lives somewhere, or the vast majority of people live somewhere. And it's a thing that a huge amount of people can address and have an impact on. And yeah, we just felt if we start there, if we focus there, it's such a big part of the problem, that would be a really good thing to just focus all of our energy on addressing. And it may be that we then have other opportunity to help and assist people in other areas, or that it just inspires them to then go and look at the other areas, as you say. So yeah.
So this is it's a connection device in many ways, isn't it, this app? Because it's connecting businesses with the people who need the services of those businesses. So whilst you might describe it as a consumer app, it is actually more than that, isn't it? Because this is a facilitator for actually taking action. Do you want to give us a little bit of an idea of the kind of the structure and what people can expect when they download SuSy?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Great. So, I mean, SuSy, as I said, it's designed for the user journey that we envisage. Is you get a big bill come in, you go, what on earth can I do about this? You find and download SuSy. You can then locate your home on within the app. You put in your address, draw a little box around it on Google Maps, and we immediately pull a whole bunch of publicly available data sets to give us a picture of the fabric of your home. So that's EPC, we're looking at geolocation data, incident sunlight, rainfall, all of these things, average temperature. Then we offer the individual the opportunity, because we recognize, you might have bought your house, if you own your house 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, and you may have done a bunch of work on it since. So what is in the EPC register may well not be that accurate. So we give people the opportunity to then update that information so that we've got a really clear picture of their current property, and they can also give us meter readings or connect us to their smart meter, so we've got a good idea of their energy usage too. That all helps us create a profile, and what we're essentially doing is creating a digital twin of the property. We can then apply from the things that they've said they've done to the property and exist in the property, from insulation to windows to solar to heat pumps, etc. Those things that haven't been done, we can then apply those potential upgrades to that property in digitally and virtually, and give a good indication. It's not going to be 100% accurate, but give a good indication from what we know about materials, properties, and data science, and their energy usage and the profile of their home, the potential savings, both in terms of kilowatt hours, assuming that they continue to use the home in the same way, and in terms of CO2 saving. And what we will then do is suggest different projects that they can undertake. So at the moment, as you mentioned the other day, we've just launched the app. We've launched with 5 key projects, one of which is a DIY one, which is simply fitting LED light bulbs if they don't have them. You can get people to come and do that for you, but many people may choose to do it themselves. The others are loft insulation, window replacement, heat pumps, and solar. We're working on releasing wall insulation at the moment. And then the beauty of the platform is it's technology agnostic. So as different technologies become available and as we continue to develop it, we can just add in additional products to that and show people the savings that they could make. What we then do is offer them the opportunity to actually say, well, would you like to reach out to a contractor and get an idea of, we give indicative estimates. We think a project this size, from what we know, we believe will be roughly in this ballpark to undertake the work. And as we've said, here's the indicative saving, both in terms of money, kilowatt hours, and CO2. But they're invited to essentially invite estimates from contractors. Now, to start with, we know people are very, careful about their data, and rightly so. And so what we do is, because we've got all that information on the property, we're able to share that with the contractor without actually giving away the individual's details. Apart from in the case of a heat pump is a complex installation, and therefore that indicative estimate step gets missed. But for the other projects, they're invited to give an indicative estimate. This is good for the contractor in the sense that they get a profile of the property. They get all that information that otherwise they'd have to travel out and actually view the property in order to see. And they can give an indicative cost. Now you get a number of indicative costs back, and then you can decide. That saves the contractor time, because if it's people who are just, they're just starting out on their journey and maybe they're not ready to really commit, they just want to get an idea, then it allows them to do that. The contractor can respond quite easily, and everyone's happy. If they then decide, genuinely, I'm interested in this, I might do this now, I want to go forward, they can then choose to share their details with selected contractors, invite them to come into the home and provide them with a quote. That's where we sit at the moment. Where we're going is to also then provide financing solutions. So as I mentioned earlier, rather than it then being a £10,000 installation, it's one that you can pay off, and you're paying 200 quid a month or whatever it may be. But the beauty of that is you're making the savings from day one, so it's offsetting the costs. So that is the basic broad principle on which we're operating as a starting point.
It's fascinating, this. It really is, because I think the way that you've described it there with this whole kind of big data focus is, I can imagine in the not too distant future, it could be that you have such a powerhouse of data that you can interrogate and report back on. Is almost like, if I've got this right, and correct me if I am wrong here, it's a little bit like the when you use Google Maps for sat-nav, is that the more of us who are using it, because it's using the real-time positioning of everybody's data who's using the app or the service in real time, the more of us using it, the more accurate it gets. It feels like that's a similar thing here, that you'll be able to then profile particular areas for additional kind of services and support. And so because the service is free, encouraging many people to do this, to get the profile, then builds the data on your side, which enables then an ongoing, continuously improving kind of data service, if you like, from your side of things too. So it's a kind of a win-win-win. Contractors win, you win, we win as consumers. It's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see the data as being absolutely key. And the more people who use it, and then they get something done. It helps us profile properties better, as you've said. When they get something done, that only improves the accuracy, of our broad indicative estimates, because we can see the quotes that have been provided, but also of the impact once the work is done. If we're connected to their smart meter, we can see the impact that it's had on the property's energy usage. And what we do want to build in as well is some elements of, budgetary nudges in terms of letting people set a budget. And people can do that on a smart meter now, but you sort of got to go back and look at the dial. But we're saying the beauty, again, of having something on a phone, so you can give people a nudge. You can say, did you know you've gone over budget today? What is the reason for that? And they can go and investigate, see, have they left something on, or, what's happening there. And I think that particularly, so there is something that has been observed, which is a tendency for behavior change when people do undertake improvements. So as the property becomes more efficient, don't necessarily make that saving immediately, because if they then start to use more energy. So I think this is an important element as well, to actually say, well, hang on a second. You know that now your overall property energy usage has gone up. You've changed your behavior. So if you wanted to make the improvement, then you had to do the work and then kind of nudge them towards saying, right, let's make sure that we're now maintaining our sort of behavior in terms of energy usage.
Where do you feel this is going? I mean, at the moment you're talking about sustainable homes, but it feels like there's a crossover here for commercial businesses, even potentially big venues who obviously consume. I was at a venue in London yesterday and I noticed that the air conditioning was on. It needed to be. There were some 10,000 people in the room, as it were. And you were thinking, my goodness, this would be so hot without air conditioning. But of course, the carbon footprint of that in itself is just off the scale. I mean,
Yeah.
this kind of translates to every kind of internal space, doesn't it, in time?
Yeah, it does. And I've got to say, there are a lot. So we are interesting and unusual as a business in the sense that we've chosen to tackle the domestic retrofit market. There are a number of businesses and solutions out there working on the commercial market because it's a little bit easier. Just because the economic argument is bigger. So there are other solutions out there sort of tackling that on a case-by-case basis. And that's why whereas typically you would pay for that service for someone to be monitoring your energy usage and essentially smart systems that will turn off a sense whether people are in rooms and turn things off and make sure that actually automatically you're making the best energy usage of that commercial property. For a domestic property, it doesn't make sense to have all of that sensory installation and all of that sort of thing. It just doesn't make economic sense. So there are a number of sort of people and businesses out there addressing that. That's not that we don't see. We do actually have a view and an ambition towards creating SuSy Business. And again, it would probably start with sort of that fabric, improving that fabric. Because, I mean, there's 20 million privately owned properties in the UK, and I think it's about 15 million of those are owner occupied. So there's a lot to go at and a lot of work to do on the domestic front. And I imagine probably someone pretty clever will come along and crack a different element of that commercial side. We do have a mind to it, but we really want to make sure that we are honing in on our market and delivering for that target market, really delivering for people, owner occupiers, and we are looking at supporting large scale landlords as well. So that's actually the next place that we're looking to go, is how do we take the solution and tailor it to the tenanted market, where the challenges are slightly different, because it's about engaging the tenant in the benefit and helping the property managers to identify the most appropriate properties. It's a slightly different solution, but we're already in discussions with one organization about building a solution for them that would help them address that and keep their tenants engaged in the process, so that it just helps them then retrofit their portfolio of homes.
Wow, the opportunities! But I think you're so right in terms of, like, this is a big enough market to start with anyway, so we can explore those ideas. But actually, let's just get everybody in everybody's home up to this kind of achievable level. And I think that was the word that really kind of has resonated with me as I was looking deeply into the website and obviously playing with the app and everything. It was just this whole thing about it's achievable, it's not complicated. And I think that's just such a lovely part of the proposition, is it's very accessible. You don't have to have any building management knowledge. You don't really even have to know anything more than even how to change a light bulb, literally. So it was it was just really interesting to watch how it's very unthreatening. You can use this literally in the palm of your hand to ease yourself into this space, but then very quickly see, actually there is something I can do about this. And just the seamless, frictionless way then you add in the funding options as well. It becomes, okay, so actually this isn't just playing with an app. This is actually something I really need to do, but I can do. And so these guys, I can kind of trust them to lead me in that direction. How do people get hold of this? Because I'm sure people listening to this will say, come on, Neil, just tell us how we can get it. Stop talking around it. Just
absolutely.
Let us know.
So,
we want to play with it.
App Store, go to the App Store, the Google Play Store. and literally put SuSy, SuSy, or SuSy House. If you're a contractor and you're looking to provide, services, you want to register, you search SuSy Business. But yeah, you find them both now on the App Store and the Play Store.
And I will certainly advocate that people really, really need to get in and load this up and have a little look, have a little play, because it is quite enlightening even when you're starting to edit your profile, because it, very accurately kind of, specs out where you are and where you live and everything. But when you start to add in, well, I've got this number of windows in my house, and you look at it, you think, crikey, that is actually a lot of windows. I didn't realize we actually had so many windows. And even just the insight it gives you in terms of your own house that you might have lived in for years, it's fascinating. So yes, get in there, have a play, and I will put the links to the app stores there, and also to the main website if anybody wants to have a little read more in terms of the business and kind of where it's going. And so I'm going to be putting this one out, Bryan, to obviously my network will be listening to this, as well as the Mindful Collective, because what we're always looking for are great case studies of organizations who are looking to be, innovatively helpful. And I think certainly the SuSy app is more than qualifying for that on the Mindful Collective showcase, if you like, of new services and apps that people really need to be trying. So it's been really, really insightful hearing a little bit more background behind it, because often we download these apps and you don't know the people behind it, you don't really know what the story is. So yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much for your time today, Bryan, just giving that insight to all of us.
No, brilliant. Thank you. I've really enjoyed being on. Thanks for the chance to have the chat, and I'd be delighted for you to share that. That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Great stuff. And I think the other thing I'd like to do as well, and this is just putting a little sort of marker in the sand here, is that if we could do a part 2 of this, and actually when you're a few months into this, we'll come back and have another little chat and obviously stimulate hopefully a few other people to download this incredible service, but also find out how it's going, because I think the kind of behind the scenes kind of fly on the wall insight for an organization which I think is going to go from strength to strength, but obviously a lot of people have had their own apps. Maybe they've been entrepreneurial and tried a new service and it hasn't quite stuck for whatever reason. It will be great to come back and see, how this is inevitably going to be flying along at that point. And also some of the data insights that you've managed to capture around that time. I think it'll be very, very interesting for a lot of people. So if you're up for that, we'll do a part 2 in a few months'
love
time.
to. Yeah, love to come back and report. A good sense of accountability there as well, as to how we're come on, guys, I'm going back on the show.
Yeah, he's going to be pestering us. Yeah. He's not going to let us get away with it, so we've got to do it.
Yeah. No,
that's great. So the audience, my audience, will be watching. So that's all good. But Brilliant. That's great. Thanks a lot for your time today, Bryan.
Thanks, Neil.